Bros, back again. Special guest for a special segment that we're trying to kick off. This is the Premier Bros Cypher, our group discussion format. And, we're pleased to welcome Corin. Corin is our Liverpool specialist, a long-time Liverpool fan, a good friend of the show. And welcome, Corin.
All right, thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
As a Liverpool fan, you must be feeling pretty good these days, I just want to talk about this season. I guess the expectations, I think Liverpool have exceeded expectations by a mile, actually. I think everyone would have anticipated a rougher season under the new manager, Arne Slot. Your impression of the manager?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for it to be anything but positive. I think, there was a cloud of uncertainty over the team once Klopp announced his decision to leave last season, which I think in retrospect, most Liverpool fans I speak to still are unsure about the timing of that announcement, because it's inevitable that it would have affected the team, and I think it did. I think it helped a lot that he was clearly on board with the new manager. If you remember, at the end of the last season, he did what I've seen no other manager do. He started this chant singing the name of Slot, and I think that helped get the fans on board. But I do think that uncertainty permeated the new season. I think everybody was just not sure what to expect, and for me personally, Champions League is always the basic goal for clubs like Liverpool, Arsenal, City. Well, not United anymore, I think. but
we have a United fan, just so you know, but the view is shared.
No worries, man. Tell it like it is. Tell it how you believe it to be.
I'm so happy to be able to say that. Anyway, so I think the hope was, and I think the expectation on my part was, okay, because I do think personnel-wise we were in decent shape. But I don't think anybody could honestly say they expected this. And if I'm honest, Klopp is Jesus to me. But if I'm honest, I'm enjoying this more. It's hard for me to say that, right? Because of how I feel about Klopp. But I'm certainly enjoying this more than I did.
Yeah, because you're winning, obviously, right? So of course you enjoyed it.
It's not just that, David.
Okay.
Because we've won before. Remember, we're not talking about Arsenal here now. We have won from the club. We won a lot of games. The thing is, it was always very frenetic, right? Mm-hmm. Watching a Liverpool game during the Klopp era, as thankful as we are and were for him, you always felt that you had to outscore your opponent. And I think that Salah has come in, and because of his style of play and his preference for possession, it's a more, I don't know if relaxing is the word, but it is a more relaxing vibe to Liverpool games. You do feel like you're in more control. That's lately that hasn't necessarily borne out in the stats, because we've started to concede a bit more recently, but certainly up until recently, you are more confident that if you score one or two, that you'll be able to hold that lead. Whereas with Klopp, it was so end to end that you might be in a game where you're winning 4-3. I would say that is the main difference for me, and personally, it would be hard for me to say that I don't enjoy that more. You feel less nervous watching games, certainly up until recently. So, whereas I feel like the style of play on the Klopp was probably a bit more exciting, it still is aesthetically pleasing now, With a little bit more than half a season gone, I can't make any long-term predictions for how Slot will work out, but so far I'm enjoying his style more than I did Klopp's, and I never would have expected to be able to say that. So I'm happy so far as far as play on the field is concerned, and as you say, we're winning.
Do you have a prioritization in your mind as it comes to the Premier League versus the Champions League? Do you feel like Liverpool has a chance of winning both, a double, treble, quadruple? What are your goals for Liverpool? What do you think is achievable this season?
When a season begins and you're winning a lot of games, you always, you think treble, you think quadruple. For me, it's always Premier League first, Champions League second, and then everything after that is a bonus. I believe us to be the best team in the Premier League and in the Champions League. So I do think winning both of those is achievable. Whether or not that happens is another thing, because as you guys know, lasting long in the Champions League is detrimental to your Premier League performances. And Slot already has not shown propensity to want to rotate a lot, and so it's bound to affect us at some point. But I do think winning both is achievable. I certainly am confident that we're going to go far in the Champions League. We'll see how far we go. But the Champions League is one of those weird competitions. You want to be in it, particularly because of the financial implications of it. But the Premier League still, for me, is a gold standard. And if you ask me to choose one or the other, I'm always going to tell you Premier League.
Yeah, we were talking about Klopp before, and the difference between Klopp and Arne Slot. And you mentioned with Klopp, there was this very frenetic, high octane approach, right? And in the last 2 seasons, we saw Liverpool fall back a little bit towards the back end of the season. And you wonder if that had to do with the fact that, they just couldn't sustain that high energy that they needed to achieve that Klopp directive. Now that you have more control over games, do you see that as being the telling difference in how they finish the season?
Well, I think that has been. I think it's been for 2 reasons. One, the pace, as you rightfully mentioned, that Klopp used to play at. And if you look at his record for Dortmund, there often was a drop off after title-winning seasons. He just expected a lot, fitness-wise, from his players. So I think that inevitably would have an effect. But also, in recent years, we haven't had the depth in quality, I think, to effectively sustain. And so as time passed with Klopp, he rotated a little bit less as well. The lack of finances being pumped into the playing staff had a lot to do with that. And I think, Slot is going to have to contend with that as well. But yes, I do think that Slot's playing style is less taxing. But I still wouldn't pretend to be able to know. I'm not following the metrics in terms of how many, miles each player is running, anything like that. I think eventually Slot is going to have to force himself to rotate more than he does. If it is that we are progressing through the Champions League stages and getting to the latter part of the Premier League season. We're 6 points ahead with a game in hand, but as I was telling somebody yesterday, I'm still terrified of this Arsenal team.
It should be. After this weekend's results, you should be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and in no way thinking that even close to
it's over.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the legs, right, in talking about going into the back half of the season. When we think about the key players for Liverpool, Mo Salah, Van Dijk, each being over 30, I think Salah 32, Van Dijk somewhere around 34, both out of contract at the end of season. How do you feel Liverpool is handling that business? And also, we know Trent Alexander-Arnold contract expiring. How are you feeling about the front office and how they're handling the key players on the squad?
I'm feeling awful, and it's again it's a cloud that you try to ignore while you're in a possible title-winning season, but it's an awful position to be in. And what kills me is that we've seen it coming. I mean, I don't know what has been happening behind the scenes. I don't know how many contracts they've put in front of these guys. I don't know how many they've turned down. But in my opinion, you reach a certain stage if a player who is as valuable as all of them are, but particularly Trent because of his age, if they're refusing to sign, you move them on. We do not have the luxury of allowing assets like that to leave without getting any return. We're not one of those clubs that have unending resources or owners that have shown a desire to spend. I just think it's a luxury we cannot afford. And we should have seen it coming. And I think that one of the issues I have with FSG, they've done a lot of great things for the club. The new stadium stands out. They've done very well in finding managers, obviously. Klopp, and now it appears with Slot as well. However, I think they have been way too reactive when it comes to the playing staff. You usually can see with Liverpool a crisis coming from a season or two ahead. A couple of years ago, it was the midfield. It was down to bare bones, and I think it affected us as it relates to the title challenge. We've restocked, and as I say, it always seems like we restock a transfer window too late. But we have restocked, brought in Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai. Now it's the defense. Van Dijk is up there, though he seems to be showing himself to be one of those players that can play well into the latter stages of his career. But beyond him, we have Konate, who has shown himself to be excellent. But after him, what is there? Most fans have been screaming for a capable backup to Trent for a while. I personally don't think Bradley is it, but we'll see. Robertson is on the decline now. For me, this has to be his last season as a starter. But we don't seem to show that foresight as it relates to bringing in reinforcements.
About Tsimikas, Jarrell Kwanzaa.
And Gomez is a very, very versatile defensive player.
He is, and he's very
quality,
good, but
quality, yeah.
He's always in the treatment room. So it's someone you can't count on. When he is fit, when he's playing well, he can play across the back four. He's quick, but he's so often injured. Kwanzaa has regressed. Last season and the season before, he looked as if he was going to be that next big thing from the academy, but he's strangely regressed, and I think he's a good candidate for a loan at the moment. But we have no choice but to bring in another centre back and another left back, and if Trent leaves, we have to bring in another right back as well. But I just think that reluctance to show foresight has shown its head where it comes to the renewal of those contracts as well, because we should have never allowed it to get to this stage. How do you have your arguably, Alisson aside, your three best players or your three most important players out of contract? However, if we win the title this season, it would it would make losing them feel a lot better. But I think we'd be in for big trouble if we lose all three, and I really, really hope it doesn't come to that.
Well, because you mentioned all three of those, I'll just, as a matter of curiosity, which of those players, if you had to choose one as the most indispensable, who would that be for you?
That's so tough, but I mean, I would say Salah. If you're asking me who would be most difficult to replace, but I'd probably have to settle on Van Dijk because he's captain. I mean, losing your captain on a free when he's in such good form is criminal. But they'll all be difficult to replace. I have my issues with Trent and his defending. But there is no doubt he's an outrageous talent that if he were to be sold would net you 100 million plus, right? So I just cannot imagine a situation where you lose him for free.
We've been talking about Slot and how he's really adjusted to the role very well, right? And one of the reasons people like Slot is it's kind of charismatic, very smooth, good with the press. But do you feel like he should have been or should be more adamant about replacing these players in the media? When he gets asked questions by the media, he's very cool, calm about it. But do you think he could force the issue more with the Liverpool boardroom by sending messages through the media?
No, I mean, personally, I'm totally against that. I hate to say Salah has a history of doing his negotiations through the media. This isn't the first time. He did it the last time as well. I hate it. I mean, for me, it's such a distraction. Or has the potential to be. To me, you keep those private, and I would hate to see the manager get involved with that. So one of the things I have been impressed with is how he doesn't allow himself to get drawn on into those kinds of conversations by the press, because obviously they do try. Also been impressed with how Van Dijk has handled it, but I have a big problem with the way in which Salah generally handles his contract negotiations. He looks a lot more innocent than he is. I love him as a player, but he can't wait to find a microphone after games to talk about how this is his last season. We get it.
Brings to mind the fact that he's not only doing it through the media, he's doing it through his performances as well. If you look at how well he has performed this season, you have to ask the question, why do you see this uptick in form? Where do you see that coming from Salah, actually?
I have zero doubt that there is an aspect in his mind of, I'm going to show them. and it's often. I mean, he's always playing well right now, but it's often in his best performances that he looks to find a microphone to speak about it being his last. However, there are subtle differences in terms of how he's being asked to play this season. Klopp demanded a lot from everyone on the field, but the metrics are showing that Salah runs the least of the Liverpool players at the moment, and he's asked to do the least defensive work of the front players, which is totally understandable because of his age, and I think totally sensible. And so he's been relieved of a lot of the defensive responsibilities that he was asked to be involved with. Or a Slot is clearly saying to him to save your energy for the attack. And I think that that's benefiting him production-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just a second to the Bournemouth game, because that was, I think that's anyone who saw that game would have drawn the same conclusion. On that left side of the field for Bournemouth, that's where they had all of their joy. Semenyo, Kirkes, who I think actually would be a great addition to Liverpool. I don't know if you're
I agree too.
Yeah. They just tore up on that left side because Salah was not running back, exposing Trent, and Trent just couldn't handle the overload, and they got a lot of joy from that side. They were a little bit unlucky not to get some pay dirt from that side of the field, but that certainly is an area where Liverpool look vulnerable for the reason you mentioned. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can be a little bit unfair to Trent at times, because, as I said, Salah is doing less defensive work. Slot covers for that by asking his defensive midfielder to slide over. But I mean, Trent is the wrong player to be exposed, right? For me, he's awful in one-on-one situations. So it's a tough ask, I think, for anybody to play on Salah's side of the field right now. But particularly bad for someone like Trent, that I just don't think has the one-on-one defensive attributes. It gives so much to the attack. To me, you find a way to live with that.
And they have. I mean, if you talk about, just to bring in, you mentioned the midfield, right? And we have, Gravenberch, who has been an absolute revelation, right? One of the standout performers of the Premier League this season, by far. Your thoughts on his performances and how Arne has used him, because he's actually he's an offensive midfielder, and he's been converted now to play in this deeper lying role. And I think it's been a stroke of genius.
Yeah, no, I could talk about Gravenberch for days. He's a player I've always loved, playing style wise. First touches, I mean, just ridiculous. But just didn't excel in the way that Klopp used him. To be honest, didn't excel in the way that Bayern Munich used him either, or we would never have been able to get him. Interestingly, apparently Klopp had given his board 3 names that he saw as future game changers, and one of them was Gravenberch. But it was almost, I think a lot of fans had given up on him. You see talent because it's obvious. How can you not see it? But it just wasn't translating to the field, and that midfield crisis that we've had, and the reluctance to buy. Well, we were unsuccessful in
Zubimendi. I think you went for Zubimendi.
Exactly.
And Caicedo before that, Lavia, bids for Caicedo and Lavia, right? Didn't go through.
Right, which brings into question as to why we can't close these deals. But anyway, it forced Slot to try him there, and it's just been a revelation. Like, it looks as if that is where he was born to play, because his ball carrying ability from deep. I don't know many players worldwide right now that have it. He has 2 attributes that I think, more than 2, but there are 2 that stand out to me that elevate him above a lot of other deep line players. One, his ball carrying ability, but his ability to turn. We had Henderson for years, who was unable to turn on the ball, and I think a lot of people underestimate how integral that is for the player that drops back to collect the ball from your defense, to not be able to turn. Gravenberch is effectively press resistant, because pressing him from behind, 9 times out of 10 he's going to get past you. And I just don't think there are many players right now certainly in the Premier League, but maybe even in world football, there aren't many that have his ability to turn on the ball. And then he has this quick gliding burst of speed. So as much as I have liked him or loved him as a player, who could say they expected this? He has been such a revelation. However, I think Slot is playing a dangerous game where Gravenberch is concerned because he's rarely rested. And I think he's going to have to consider resting him a lot more as the season progresses, because if he gets injured, we're in big trouble, as you can imagine. We don't have a replacement for him. We can bring on Endo, but it's a totally different game plan with him in the team.
You mentioned a little bit about your dissatisfaction, right, with the depth of the squad, at least in the back line, right? We're in the last day of the January transfer window. Liverpool has made 0 moves to date. What would you have liked to see Liverpool do in the transfer window?
I would have liked to have seen at least 2 fullbacks brought in. That would have satisfied me. I like Endo, but I still would like to see another defensive midfielder brought in as well. But I suppose that can wait until the summer. I think that the need for particularly a left back, because of the rapid decline, in my opinion, of Robertson, really is essential. I wouldn't mind seeing Nunez replaced. I think, yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, I give up on players very easily, and I gave him more time. I think, he's come on and played well recently, but he is not going to be the player we paid 80 million for. He's going to have to be moved on. I wouldn't mind that being sooner rather than later, but I suppose that can wait as well. I think the defensive reinforcements are the most pressing, yeah. And I wouldn't have mind seeing a centre back coming as well. We monitor players really well, but don't buy as well as we used to. But again, I suppose, just to be fair, I suppose that is the case when you have a squad that you believe to be very high in quality, and so anyone that you do buy has to be of similar quality, and those aren't easy to come by, particularly, as you know, in the January market. It's very hard to get.
Okay, speaking of depth, we see at Arsenal, for example, some young players coming through the academy making a big impact. We see it at United as well, with Ahmad or Garnacho to a lesser extent. At Liverpool, what's the status with the academy players? We don't really see them getting the opportunity like we see at other clubs.
Yeah, no, and that has been a bit of a discussion recently. We haven't seen much from the academy lately. We've had a period where there have not been many breaking through, some false dawns, but I suppose one could say there just aren't a lot of opportunities for players to break. It's easier for players to break through when the team isn't doing that well. And I think that when some of the players broke through, like Trent, although he would break through during any period, he came through during a period where there wasn't a lot of expectation where Liverpool is concerned. It's easier to bring through players in that kind of an environment. So I don't want to jump to the conclusion and say that the academy isn't doing what it should be doing. But the fact remains, we haven't seen that emergence of young talent that we used to in the past.
You mentioned Darwin Nunez, and that makes me think about the way Slot, that is approaching the number 9 position. He's been playing Luis Diaz as a false 9. Diaz isn't really scoring, but it appears Liverpool doesn't really need him to score. Do you feel like that's a sustainable approach? Can you reach the heights that you want to reach, which is the Premier League first and potentially Champions League, playing with a false 9 for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I'm confident that we can. I have zero worries for Liverpool where goal scoring is concerned, unless Salah gets injured, which is obviously that's a possibility. Slot made his opinion on Nunez very clear from the start, not through his words, but by the fact that from the very start he was not playing. He was playing often. He's making cameos, or he's starting in the in the odd game. I think the false nine is what Slot has decided right now is best for the team, and who could argue, because it has resulted in a lot of goals. We have no problem where goal scoring is concerned, and I feel like it's very sustainable. My worry is more the recent leaking of goals at the back, even against Bournemouth. If it wasn't for Alisson,
well,
you know,
they hit the post twice. You know,
Right.
Menu hit the post, Tavernier hit the post, Clivert missed I wouldn't call it a sitter, but you know, it was an opportunity on goal, on an empty goal. So yeah, the opportunities. I've always said Liverpool, they give away opportunities.
We do, and Alisson, and that's why when you were asking me about the important players, I say Alisson aside, because he saves us a lot. It's so important to have a player like him at the back. So that's more my worry, rather than goal scoring. Knock on wood, but I have no worries at the moment where we're scoring it.
My final question for you is related to the goal scoring, actually, because this has been my feeling throughout the entirety of the season, and I think it would be hard pressed for anyone to argue with the fact that you rely almost exclusively on Mo Salah for that goal scoring threat. Yes, other players chip in here and there. I mean, but in reality, he's either the one providing or scoring, right? The majority of your goals. If Mo Salah gets injured, do you think that you can maintain the performances and the results without Mo Salah on the team for a stretch?
Not if it's a long-term injury, no. I'd be lying if I said that. I don't. But I think a lot of teams, when you have a talent like that, you run everything through that player. And there's no doubt that we run everything attacking-wise, certainly in the final third, through Salah. He creates and he scores. We depend on him immensely. If he were to get injured, I think we would be in big trouble. I'm not concerned about, making the Champions League. I think we that wouldn't be an issue, but I think I don't think we could sustain a title challenge without him.
Yeah, I agree. And just a follow-up question to that: in the event that he does leave, is there a player that you see out there that you have identified as the one that you would want them to bring in to fill that void?
I don't know who fills that very big void. I've had my eyes on Cunha from Wolves.
Okay. I was saying this guy at Arsenal. I would love to see him at Arsenal. I wished they had gone after him this winter.
So good. And he's destined for a
big club.
It's just a matter of he will leave. So it's a matter of which, and I would love for Liverpool to get him. But we'll see. I mean, whether it's an injury or whether Salah leaves, it's going to be a massive hole to fill. I just hope we can, fill our stomachs with a title in the meantime before it happens.
Yeah, Corin, it's been great, man. We appreciate your views. I hope you will join us again in the near future.
Absolutely. Just say when.
Okay, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Corin. Appreciate it, man.
All right, you're welcome.